Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hello everyone, so I'm Carl Busby, your host of Game Set Matchup, the #1 partnerships podcast, and we are back with another episode. So today I caught up with Mariela Hunter, who is the founder and COO at a company called Fractional. So Mariela is currently based in Edinburgh, but has travelled and worked with many different businesses all around the world. This, of course, means she has a wealth of experience when it comes to building and creating partnerships and working with different businesses. We discuss what it's like to work with different cultures across different countries and how their approaches differ when it comes to partnerships. Also, Mariela is a 3-time founder and also talks about her experiences with creating startups, the challenges this can bring, and what it's like to create partnerships as a startup as well. We wrap up at the end by talking about what the future holds for businesses, especially with AI infiltrating the workspace, and how she thinks this will affect business and partnership creation moving forward. As always, remember, you can find out more about Finder and how we are helping businesses secure discovery calls with veteran decision makers by hitting the links in the description. Enjoy this week's episode. Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Game Set Matchup. So this is the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. Maybe you're new to the partnerships world, or maybe you're looking for a bit of advice how to get started, or you could be an experienced pro, just looking for a bit of inspiration or direction. But whichever one it is, as always, we thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Carl Busby, and very excited today. Please welcome our guest. This is Mariela Hunter, who is the founder and COO at Fractional. Hello and welcome, Mariela.
Yeah, excited to join you today, and look forward to diving in.
Oh, that's amazing. So look, we start off with a little bit of introductions we like to do with obviously all our guests, so people can get to know a bit more of yourself. So obviously we're going to get into some of the bits, I guess, later on, but someone that's worked with obviously VC companies, large corporates, and again a founder and entrepreneur, which we'll probably come on to later. Just tell listeners a little bit more about yourself, maybe a bit about your background and what you're currently doing at the moment.
Absolutely. So I operate at the intersection between large corporations, as you mentioned, and startups. The focus is always driving business growth. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the large corporation side, I've had the pleasure of building new businesses that's within market conglomerates, renewable energies, tech, and financial services. And within a corporation, when it comes to building businesses, the question of buy, build, partner is always critical. And in many cases, it results in partnering with scale-ups or startups, in some cases investing, and in some cases also acquisitions. As a 3-time founder, I understand the challenges firsthand of starting from an idea, scaling, and the roller coaster that is in between. So at the moment, I'm having the pleasure of working with a number of venture-backed companies, C to Series C, and leading turnarounds, accelerating path to profitability, and covering new sources of growth. And it's all very exciting at the moment.
Wow. Sounds like you're very, very busy. Just to touch on, as you mentioned again about being a founder, 3 times over, I'm always intrigued when we talk to people just to find out, that's, obviously can be very, very, very tough, very rewarding, obviously sometimes, but it does take us, a certain sort of mindset to be able to, want to sort of start your own business and stuff like that. I just thought when you stepped into that first time, looking to sort of create your own business, what sort of like was, what sort of was driving you to kind of to do that? Because it can be quite a scary thing to jump into your own, start your own business.
I think you need to have an innate kind of burn that it's driving the creation of something new. Yeah. And in some cases, it is something that you've observed that is a challenge that you overcome. So you're sort of itching your own scratch. You've seen a problem in a business, in a process, or in accessing a market. And because you've experienced it at a deep level, there is that sort of need to go in and solve it. And that need creates a conviction that not only would help you, but then when you start with the market validation, you identify, actually, there's an opportunity here for many other businesses to benefit from this. You have to have the conviction. And And I think this is almost an innate need. I think there's a bit of you have to be a little bit adventurous and addicted to adrenaline in some cases because the ups and downs are real, and it's not for everyone. So some people might find more comfort in staying with the certainty and the comfort levels that a large corporation might bring. So it's good to have that sort of innate drive to do it. Now, having said that, within corporations, I mentioned there is still companies that are investing in building new businesses, spin outs, looking at joint ventures with startups. So that's the space where I've operated. So I can't say I've had a single role, which is at the absolute core of business, the BAU. I haven't done that yet. So I've had, even with a corporation, the privilege of creating new within a corporation, which is a nice balance.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I've kind of done a bit of both. Obviously, I'm working in a startup now, obviously at Finder, so it's been a eye-opening experience over the last couple of years. Obviously the roles and stuff that you have to take on. Obviously, I've worked, again in large corporations again, where obviously just completely sort of different. Just moving on to we obviously talked previously, and I know obviously you've worked with businesses kind of all around the world, not just obviously in the UK. So just obviously on the obviously the theme of partnerships and stuff, just with your experiences, your travels, what would you say kind of like in terms of partnerships, in terms of the the cultures and the attitudes, like how that sort of varies, from like country to country? Obviously, we know you're in the UK at the moment, up in Edinburgh. But like I said, like could just maybe some just some examples of where worked in other countries and just I guess how the people is different in terms of like how the approaches are different.
Yeah, this is the first time I get this question. It's a very interesting one. And unsurprisingly, each country and culture presents its own unique challenges and opportunities.
I can imagine.
I will say to that culture can make or break a deal, understanding the cultural nuances. And I've had the pleasure of living in 7 countries.
Wow.
And so let me just go with a few examples, because otherwise we could end up the whole chat talking about the question. So for instance, I lived in Germany, and it made it easier for me to understand some of those cultural nuances when doing business with German companies or the German counterparty in a deal. And normally I would not lead with sort of a reverse engineer approach from understanding the clear outcomes and working my way back to, and this is where we are today, and outlining the process very clearly, being super transparent and articulate on that end-to-end business process and the outcomes, extreme clarity on those outcomes, and of course, being very collaborative. That might be an approach I wouldn't apply anywhere else, but I know it worked very well there. And as I turn to the US, well, first I'll say about the US that it's so vast that you kind of generalize at country level. Each region is unique. I'm currently more West Coast focused, but even there, I think you find big differences depending on even just micro company cultures, as well as the stage of the company where they're at and the focus level. And there's a bit of an energy at the moment in terms of some of the unique challenges that are happening in the market, particularly in the VC space. So those are happening now that might not necessarily have been the case last year. But I would say within that sort of early stage startup, just focusing right now on what I'm seeing at the moment is when it comes to partnerships, being more bold, ambitious, have to be fast-paced, succinct, outcome-driven, to the point, gets the deal done. It's a different, more intense energy, but very entrepreneurial. So that's different a little bit in terms of that approach. And you mentioned the UK. I would say UK is more reserved.
Okay, interesting.
So the politeness can mask the intensity of the negotiations. There is a lot of focus and energy on reading between the lines. The level of diligence, preparations for deals is at a whole new level.
Yeah.
But while there's a lot of thoroughness, I would say the transparency is probably not as much as where I see elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I would say this is one of the circumstances where the German directness of communication is something that I miss sometimes in UK deals. But I think just to wrap it all up, the one thing that's above all is relationships. Just deals are, even though you might be representing a brand, it's ultimately the people that you are interacting, that you're going to be sitting around the table. And building relationships, rapport, building trust in an environment for the partnerships to flourish is key, no matter what geography you're in.
Yeah, no, I think I'm just in general. I was fascinated about the cultures and, like you said, the way that can work with business. No surprise there, you're saying that with Germany, it's very sort of direct. I mean, obviously I live in the UK, but I like the direct. But I'd rather just let's get to the rather than like you said the politeness and reading between the lines. That's so it's more, it creates more work. But no, again, it's really, really, really interesting. So just obviously, again, I know you worked with obviously lots of experience with different types of businesses, but more specifically with VC, so venture capital backed companies. In sort of like with 2024, how so what do you think are the sort of key trends and like winning strategies at the moment for these companies in terms of taking advantage of partnerships? Any sort of themes around that you think make sense?
Yeah. Interesting. Partnerships, I would say partnerships in that context almost feel like the last guest to arrive at the party. Fashionably late, but underrated. So for most of these companies, when it comes to business growth, it's almost 100% of the focus going into either ramping up lead gen, expanding the sales team, pouring even more money into marketing. In some cases, the efficiency around the conversion metrics and data, but that's almost the majority of the focus. Now, I will say when it comes to tech partnerships, unlike large corporations, the tech stack integrations, API development, co-development are well thought out. It's extremely positive. And this is actually something that large corporations could learn from in terms of not wasting time and resources on building anything that doesn't relate to the core business that is the ultimate driver of the value of the business. I see a lot of corporations building where it could have been much more efficiently just to have a partnership. But turning back to the business growth on the earlier stage space, partnerships for distribution deals, marketplaces, tapping into higher conversion channels are unfortunately underlooked. Despite the massive potential. It
makes a lot of sense. I was just going to say, I think just to obviously flip it on its sort of head, just coming from a startup or an entrepreneur perspective, when it comes to considering strategic sort of partnerships, what would you say are like some of the sort of challenges, because they'll be very, very different to obviously a smaller company or a startup company, and compared to like say a VC or a larger business. So just what would you experience? We say that the kind of anything unique specifically to startups or entrepreneurs.
So when it comes to startups and entrepreneurs, I would say there's a few big challenges, but there's big opportunities. On the startup side, there's a few things that I find common themes that are challenging for them. The first is the alignment of vision and goals with the partner. So being very transparent up front to formulate that common vision and objectives can be tough. And it can take a bit longer. I think there's a lot more muscle when it comes to corporations to reaching that stage. And that often leads to earlier misalignment, strategic conflicts, and it sort of dilutes the partnership effectiveness because that stage is not achieved in an efficient way. A second big one for startups is resource allocation. High-stake partnerships require the engagement from the C-suite, And in this case, when it comes to scale ups, there's just very limited resources, very limited mind share capacity.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a big stakes to dedicate enough time and resources from the CISO team to developing and activating the partnership. And that can create strain when it comes to budgets and operational bandwidth to just keep the business running.
Yeah.
The obvious one as well is negotiating power. So startups find themselves negotiating with sometimes large brands that, again, they have the muscle, they know exactly how to strike the deal terms, and that sort of corporate memory isn't there. And so in some cases, they might be navigating that for the first time, or even they come from the large tech companies. Now they find themselves, hey, I don't have this big logo behind me in my background. I have to, now represent this company. You don't have the leverage, you don't have the power you used to have before to get the deal over the line. And that could be quite daunting. And it could mean that and this is strategically a disadvantage if the rep for the startup doesn't, in some cases, recognize the value that they bring, and they might be leaving value on the table. So it's very important to know that despite some large corporates having that power, there is still an interest that could lead to a better outcome in terms of value. So not to give up unnecessary value is key. I think as a pain point is the speed to market. Because the great thing about being a startup is you can move very quickly to get the deal done. And of course, it's very frustrating when you're dealing with a large corporate. You're dealing with something with organization could be much more bureaucratic. They can slow down decision making and slow down the process of the time to market. So I think most startups understand that, and they know that going into the deal, but it's not to say that it isn't easy, and it can become really frustrating.
No, so it's just really interesting. I think going back to your original point before, like if you are going to be, obviously doing a startup or as a founder, you need to just you got to have that innate drive and trying to keep yourself sane by the sounds of it. But again, obviously putting that effort in, those rewards obviously can come as well. So just obviously at Finder, we're obviously here all about trying to help people get those in front of people and having that first discovery call. With somebody who a decision maker, which again is kind of notoriously quite a difficult sort of thing to do. Would you say like how are corporate sort of specifically, how are they sort of like what are they doing to sort of find develop and grow partnerships out there? Like how are they actually getting out there to find businesses to talk to specifically? Because as I said, we know it can be difficult to find the business and the right people within that business to actually speak to and get things moving. So sort of how would you say like how what are companies sort of doing? Anything differently they're trying to do?
I think first a broad comment around partnerships in the corporate space right now. I think that comes from even last year. There is a little bit of a recalibration because of the valuations of some early stage companies. So going back to the buy build partner, there's indeed an increased appeal to acquisitions and direct investments because of the correction in the valuations. And I'll use the word corrections, despite it could be controversial, but I think it is given the 22 valuations. And with this trend, there will be a persistence around acquisitions as a clearer path to integrating the innovative capabilities and market offerings, bypassing the complex, resource-intensive nature of forging partnerships among corporates. And this is sort of corporate to corporate, which could be, quite complex, and it makes it more difficult for, I think, the partnership deal team to evidence the impact directly to the bottom line. When it comes to your specific questions of ways of finding partnerships, there are typically within the deal team's due diligence that will do scouting either internally. They will have external channels with investment bankers, market partners, some cases VCs and others, also within their ecosystems to identify the right partners. The boards themselves will have their own purview given their various companies that they're involved with. And this is how they are typically found. And after identifying the potential partners, the due diligence process will lead into identifying the top 2 or 3,
Right.
and then starting to forge specific strategies within that partner. The specifics of decision maker and finding decision maker is a great spot for a finder to be in, because while there might be a conviction that the deal team has found the optimal partner, there might be a sort of a less efficient process into finding the exact person who's making the decision here. So Finder's a great tool for that. And when it comes to other ways of finding it, I think the deal teams will be very active in the types of, either conferences or being in the places where they can source, find, and engage with potential partners to continue their overall growth.
No, that sounds kind of what I thought. Would be sort of involved. As you said, I mean, Finder's quite unique, but I think, like you said, in general, it's a lot of it is just getting out there. Obviously, network events, speaking to people, and just seeing a lot of where you can potentially build a synergy with someone and move it forward. Just quickly, obviously, again, obviously, just in the short time we've been speaking, again, we've got obviously a wealth of experience when it comes to all these different things with partnerships and different types of businesses. One thing we do like to ask guests, if you could give a little bit of advice just to your younger self when you were starting out. I mean, we all started somewhere on this journey. Any sort of advice you would maybe give to just like I don't know, one particular thing maybe that sort of stood out in your experiences and travels that you'd say to yourself, the younger self.
Wow. I think there's a lot of lessons for my younger self on startup and entrepreneurship, building businesses. But I think on partnerships, I was very lucky because I entered the world of partnerships when I was working within Shell. And I learned some very valuable lessons. And I'll call out, I know you said one, I'll call out 3 very quickly. The first one is reverse engineer from success, clarity of outcomes. Within that, the second one that follows is scenarios. Shell is huge in scenarios. And what this exercise helps is to find alternative options, but also how other outcomes could manifest to variables that are outside your realm of control. The third is rehearsal. So one thing Shell does very well is they will take the deal team and they split out and negotiate the different aspects of the deal, assuming different roles within their company, but also the counterparty. And what that does is it helps you identify differences between nuanced aspects that you might not uncover unless you assume the position of your counterparty. And you could start by looking at the legal aspects, commercial, etc., in order to identify things that might not have been as relevant or as obvious if you had not taken the role of the counterpart. So I think those 3 gave me a good basis to form future partnerships.
That's amazing. Thank you. I think I said I've not heard. Obviously, we've asked this question quite a lot. I haven't heard the rehearsal scenario before. Again, makes a lot of sense if you can do that to work out whether or not, like I said, it's you can see if it's actually going to work. So it's definitely an interesting one. And then just so quickly before we sort of wrap up, we'd like to just ask guests, essentially, what do you think the sort of future holds, for business when it comes to sort of creating partnerships? Just in terms of, do you think there's going to be any sort of like major changes with technologies? Obviously, we know AI is a big one out there at the moment, affecting a lot of businesses. And obviously it's still sort of growing at the moment, but yeah, like I said, any sort of themes on, like I said, what you think will kind of change in terms of with the future?
Yeah, so I think there's of course a lot of emphasis on AI right now, but getting straight to the point, the partnerships and deal making is still very much human-led component. So I think what becomes critical is in using some of the tools. So for instance, leveraging AI for partner identification and engagement, using AI to analyze market trends, identify emerging opportunities, recommend potential partners from data sources. If you have a good already data platform from within your deal teams, it can help use that data to identify the potential partners. When it comes to data sharing and collaboration among partners, if you're using a common platform, I think establishing frameworks around data sharing, security, what data is being shared and to what extent is being used, I think it's critical for transparency and compliance.
Yeah.
And investing in the right tools for not just partner sourcing, but partner management that will help automate some of the more routine tasks can be helpful so that the teams can focus more on the relationship building and more on the collaboration. I think that's also key. And then lastly, let's not forget the ethical and transparent use of AI. So best to be upfront of, how and for what purposes you're using AI.
Yeah.
And being transparent about some of the, ethical considerations if you're using partner data. It's so important to be really clear on the policies and guidelines of data usage, privacy, and controls. And having just that mutual respect with the partner when using some of these tools.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of changes coming from AI. I would say the big opportunity is in the automation of the routine task. But again, with the purpose of focusing on the relationship building, on the human aspect of partnerships, which is the most important. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that I totally agree. Just my experience, I think, all the technologies and all the platforms and software is all great, but like I said, actual, you still need human beings to get those over the line. A lot of the times, just particular personality or, like you said, like how somebody comes across can be the difference sometimes between conversation going somewhere or not. AI is not gonna replace that. Look, it's been brilliant. I just want to, before we just wrap up, really appreciate you coming on and obviously giving talking about your experience and stuff. It's just been absolutely amazing. Just for obviously people listening, might be interested to want a bit more about yourself or potentially connect with you. How can people get in touch or just hear more about what your services, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So get in touch with me through LinkedIn. It's Mariela Hunter. So connect with me. And if you're interested in accelerating your partnership strategies or other business growth strategies, such as demand generation or automation around sales teams and revenue, do get in touch.
That's amazing. And obviously, anyone listening, obviously all the information we'll put into the description. So nice and easy for you to access. So Mariela, thank you very much for coming on, being a guest on the podcast. So we really obviously appreciate it as always. And really enjoyed having the conversation.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.